Hello and welcome to Canvas, the Niger-Delta Roundtable, where I discuss the future of our Niger-Delta region. Every week, we give time to reflecting on topics relevant to the development of the Niger-Delta and her people. This episode is not different, as we're focusing once again on taking this region to a more promising future. A reminder, the program is sponsored by the operator of the NNPC, SPDC, and Total Energies Active Joint Venture, the Shell Petroleum Development Company of Nigeria Limited, headquartered in Port Harcourt. Thank you for joining. I'm Adi Dayo, Ilushakin. In commemoration of World Literacy Day, on this edition, we're discussing the topic, the power of literacy. On this edition, we honor the importance of literacy as a fundamental human right and a driving force for sustainable development. Literacy empowers individuals, fosters inclusive societies, and opens doors to countless opportunities. We'll explore efforts to promote literacy, share inspiring stories, and discuss the challenges and successes in the fight against illiteracy. We'll also hear from an expert who is making a difference in his community. Whether you're passionate about education, interested in global development, or simply want to learn more about the power of literacy, this program is for you. Let's celebrate the transformative power of literacy together. Again, a topic, a canvas for this edition is the power of literacy. And my guest is Professor Glory Amadi. Now, Glory Amadi is a professor of educational psychology at the prestigious University of Port Harcourt. He's a teacher par excellence, a systematic researcher, and human capacity development consultant. Professor Glory Amadi, hello to you. Welcome to Canvas, the Niger-Delta Roundtable.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
I am particularly fascinated with this topic, and before we started recording, I did mention that to you, and I said that I'm quite certain we'll have a good time discussing this. Let's start on this note. Considering your wealth of experience, can you share an experience of how literacy changed the life of someone that you know?
Yes, there is a particular case that is so fascinating. This young man was employed in the university as a casual staff, as a groundsman. These people that cut grass, that was the employment he had, not as a permanent staff of the university. So he got inspired seeing young people undertaking their education. And then he enrolled on an adult literacy program and then learned to read and to write. From there, he wrote his WAEC, made his papers, and wrote JAMB. This young man that I tell you today holds the PhD degree. Today, though he is still an administrative staff, but he has PhD, and he is a permanent staff of the university doing his administrative job. This person who was initially a casual staff employed to cut grass, who couldn't read, today has to himself the degree of Doctor of Philosophy.
As far as fascinating stories go, that truly is remarkable. And we'll come back to that later on, I believe, in the course of our conversation. But a lot has been said about literacy and the effects and the power of it. How does literacy contribute to the development of a community? And can it really do that?
Yes, what makes up a community is the people. Now, the quality of people you have in a community will be determined by the level of education they receive. And of course, literacy is the product of education. It is the ability to read, write, count, reason, communicate, respond. Now, education makes that possible. So in a community where you have literate people, then you can be rest assured that their contribution will be an informed contribution. In a community, everybody wants to perform one thing or the other, but the quality of what they do, the contributions they make, will be determined by the level of literacy. It enhances economic opportunities too. in that community. If you go to a place where a good number of the people there are well read, they will be able to harness the economic opportunities they have. And of course, the health is a parameter for the community development. The health outcome of such a place will also be different. So these are contributions that literacy can make in a community to cause development in a community.
Now, I've heard some persons argue that too much literacy or literacy can be a problem as well, especially with governance and community development, as it were. I mean, if too many people know too many things or think they know too many things, that governance might even be difficult. So rather than one person or a few persons knowing so much and directing others, you hear arguments and pushbacks, and people who believe that they know and will say things like, no, that's not right. How about we do it this way? Creating some kind of a friction and even reducing the rate and speed of progress, if you will.
Yes, you can't rule out frictions and conflicts when human beings gather, but literacy level of the people will help you to forge a purposeful relationship and community engagement. If you go to where they argue and they are literate, they are informed, the end point of the conflict will be positive. And then to have a place where majority of the people are not literate enough, it will always turn bad. So literacy still plays a role when in a conflict situation, when people gather.
My next question might be perceived as maybe, or should have been the very first one. But what does it mean to be literate here? And I'm asking, take our African societies. We had a time when we didn't have formal education until the Europeans, the missionaries came, visited us and brought education, which we refer to as formal education now. Does acquiring formal education amount to being literate? In other words, before the advent or introduction of formal education into Nigeria or Africa, as it were, does it mean that we were not literate at the time? And if you don't have that now, does that make you illiterate?
Yes, then we were educated, but we were not literate. Then now also we have people who are not literate. People who might also have passed through the educational process but are not literate. You can only become literate when you can read, write, speak, respond, understand, and then live a meaningful life. So if you cannot do that, and you brandish a certificate, you are still illiterate because you cannot read. And the power of literacy is apt because if you go out there, you may assume that all the people you see around, some can speak, they cannot write. There are some who can write, but they cannot write confidently. There are people who can read and write, but they have challenge in between. So these are different dimensions of illiteracy or literacy problem. So they are all there. Until you go out to make investigations, you will not know. So the quality of relationship, the interactions we have, the development we experience around us, all revolve around the literacy level of that society. So it's important we get literate.
Earlier on, you mentioned that literacy, also does several things, including engendering economic growth in a community. Yeah. How does literacy do that? What role does literacy play in promoting economic growth or development and, but in essence, reducing poverty?
Yeah. In fact, it will not be out of place to say that everything is literacy. Now, the poverty level of a place, if you trace it, you will find out that the literacy level is a strong factor. Now, to be literate means that I can communicate, I can read from sources, I can understand what somebody has penned down, I can look at the signboard and understand what has been written there, and I will get the right direction. And then all that I do will all that I do will influence the outcome or the output. So if I am not literate, it will also affect it. Now come to poverty. If you are literate, you read the newspaper, you see the advert, you apply, you secure a job. If you are literate, you read the book, you see how something is done, how crops are planted and nurtured. You read those things, you apply them, and you become rich. You interact with people, you communicate, you do business, you become rich. Now consider one who cannot do all this. In fact, I describe that state of illiteracy as blindness, because what is before you that you cannot see, you are blind to it. So imagine somebody who cannot read inscriptions, interpret the signs and symbols, he cannot communicate, he does not know what to do. Such a person is totally cut off from the system and will be less productive. So there is a strong correlation between literacy level and economic status. That's being rich or being poor. So it's such an important factor in the economic status of an individual.
In Nigeria, but at large, we have lots of challenges here. There are economic challenges we have. They're quite profound, staggering figures as far as unemployment and underemployment is concerned, and illiteracy levels are extremely high as well. Some figures say we have at least 10 million, some even say 15 million out-of-school children, and our children alone, let's not even go into the adult population that might be illiterate or not literate, as it were. And in the Niger-Delta as well, even within the Nigerian space, you have high unemployment figures as well, extremely high for that matter. One could argue that government policies, actions or inactions have contributed largely to this. But this, high poverty levels also, as it were, can be put down to poor literacy levels also?
Yes, literacy level is just one of the variables. There are other variables, but it is not ruled out at all. It is important for us, it has become very important for us to actually determine, because we may not have the statistics of people who can read and write. I personally did a survey in a community among young people that passed through primary and secondary school. And it was amazing that these young people that appear so good, they talk, they socialize, cannot read and write. They are married with children. So we also have to, go into search to find out the extent, rather than think that they have passed through the school, they can read and write. So it is one of the strong factors. It may not be the only contributing factor to the problem.
All right, Prof. You've talked about how literacy can empower individuals and even communities as well. But as far as individuals and communities go, you have different groupings of them. You have, or maybe I should just go straight to the question, how does literacy empower individuals, especially marginalized groups such as women, and considering our environment especially?
Yeah. Women and other marginalized group in the society, their major problem is that they cannot speak up, they cannot make an advocacy for themselves, this set of people. But if you give them literacy, they'll be able to speak up, they'll be able to express themselves. So that's why you now have women making advocacy. The ones championing are the ones who have had breakthrough and are now literate. So literacy will be a tool, it will be a weapon for liberation, for advocacy. So it is very essential for such set of people who are marginalized. So people from poor homes, people from rural settings, people who are neglected, what you should do to empower them may not be to give them money, but give them literacy, give them education, let them be able to express themselves. They will fight for themselves and break out of such condition.
How can we improve literacy rates in underdeveloped regions? You hear phrases such as developing countries or underdeveloped countries. Nigeria definitely falls in this rank. And by virtue of that, the Niger-Delta, no doubt, as I mentioned a while ago, alarmingly high rates of poverty, unemployment, out of school, children, all of that, maternal mortality rate, all of that, all of these negative figures are things we're quite familiar with here. And you mentioned a while ago, and rightly so, I believe that while it may not be the only parameter, literacy levels contribute to these factors, as it were. Now, since our region is underdeveloped and all of that, how can we improve literacy levels here then?
We will implement community education programs. Intentionally, you attend, in the Niger-Delta, there are a good number of the people who have left the city, they have left the typical community, they have gone into their fishing ports, their children are there. There should be a nomadic education for them. So that will bring them out, bring their children to be part of the system. Teachers should be trained. The quality of learners we have in the society is determined by the quality of teachers. So there should be deliberate attempts in the region to train teachers. In fact, government in the various state governments should go to the institutions of learning to ensure that the faculties of education that train teachers are actually having students. In fact, sponsorship of students for teacher training should be instituted. Take them to those places and make them be trained in the various subject areas so that you'll be sure that those who will be in the classroom preparing the children, because it's at that point that literacy is addressed, illiteracy is addressed, and then they will have good teachers. So that will be a program. Then providing access to books and other educational materials. We can't assume that people are reading. You should make provision. So when you do that, you have made materials available for children. In fact, the catchment point is early childhood education and primary level. You catch them at that point and make them to be literate, and then they grow with it. And then we should also leverage on technology. They should incorporate technology into the school system. It enhances it. In fact, it makes it faster, exposing children to such tools. And then learning will be easier and faster. So when they do this, they'll be able to drive the literacy need of the society.
I can't help but once again refer to your world of experience. In your estimation, do we have a high enough level of appreciation for literacy? Do you hear of developed countries or the world, or first world countries? And the figures, literacy levels, the numbers you hear from those countries are quite impressive. The countries that have over 90% literacy level. Maybe unsurprisingly, they are the most advanced economy. They have the most advanced economies in the world. If we understand the importance, the crucialness of literacy, and considering the levels that we have here, once again, alarmingly numbers of out-of-school children. When you visit some of our schools here as well, they quite leave a lot to be desired, at every level for that matter. Do we have a high enough or a good enough appreciation for literacy and the impacts that it has on us?
We live on an assumption. For instance, in Nigeria, there is that assumption that people down the south are more literate than people up the north. But a deliberate attempt has not been made to determine the rate, the level of literacy or illiteracy. So there is need to do that. Attention, there is need to prioritize education. I said before, where you address that matter is at the early childhood education level and primary. So there should be deliberate attempt to attend to these levels and then solve the problem at that point. Because at that point, it is easier for the child to master reading, writing, counting, calculating, communicating, responding to people, and forging a meaningful life. That's all about literacy. So there is need to focus on that point, at that point, that level, to address the problem. And rather than think, in fact, I've had a course to tell people at the tertiary level, education is more important at the base than even at the tertiary, because one can afford not to go to university and yet forge a meaningful life. But the one that you cannot do without, the early childhood education and the primary, which I think we have not paid the attention that those levels deserve. So we should come down to those levels, pay attention, provide adequate resources, human and material resources, and motivate the learner, motivate the teacher, and make people learn to read and write.
There are certain organizations, world global organizations such as the United Nations, with different agencies that are pushing for at the forefront of certain initiatives, such as global literacy. Yeah. Is global literacy possible? And by the way, can we in the Niger-Delta or by extension Nigeria count on such initiatives? Or is literacy simply a regional or community thing? Just do what you can to improve your literacy levels. Or can we count on, harp on, or latch on to global literacy initiatives to improve?
Yes, we can leverage on those initiatives, but they require sincere commitment by the stakeholders. When I mean stakeholders, you talk about the family, you talk about the school system, the operators of the school, you talk about the government, you talk about even the community itself. All these are stakeholders. So we can leverage on the initiative but the global community, every segment of the globe is making its own effort. So there is that need for us to key into the effort, the global effort towards advancing literacy, and ask ourselves, what are we doing? What are other people doing? What have we not done that we should do? So it should be more intentional. You leverage on such initiatives, not to only attend such conventions and conferences, but come back home and implement them. Come back home and do something more serious. It's a simple task to make everybody to be literate. Literacy here doesn't mean you being a journalist, you being a banker. No, those are career development areas. But we are talking about the citizenry. Almost all persons in the society being able to express himself by writing, by reading, by talking, by counting. So as minor as it may sound, but it's a major problem. And now, if you don't give it to a child and he grows without literacy, then that child becomes a nuisance to himself or herself and to the society. It's like a bomb. Now there is a news broadcast. He hears the sound, he sees the images, but what they say does not make meaning to him. He picks a newspaper, he cannot make meaning out of the newspaper. He picks a book. In fact, of course, he will not pick the book. There is an inscription on the wall, "Don't touch here. danger, but he likes the red color. So he goes to touch the red color and dies because he cannot read it. Don't do this, does not know what the Constitution, the law says. He cannot read them. He does not know when an advert has been placed because he cannot read. So such a person is so limited. So it's an issue. It can be addressed. All that is required is giving it the attention it requires. And it is at the early childhood education level and primary education. You resolve it and it is resolved. Then the person grows with it. Literacy is life.
It is Canvas in Niger-Delta Roundtable, and today we're discussing the power of literacy in commemoration of World Literacy Day. It comes up September 8th annually. Our guest is Professor Gloria Amadi. We have to go for a break now. We'll return in a moment. The conversation will continue. Stay with us.
Yellow and black markers indicate pipeline and flow line right-of-way boundaries. Your activity could impact on the buried high-pressure hydrocarbon pipelines and flow lines, leading to possible leaks and explosion. Please keep off. Do not engage in sand mining or any form of excavation, pipeline vandalism, oil theft, and bush burning within pipeline and flow line right-of-way. Do not farm, trade, or locate any business on pipeline and flow line right-of-way. It is against the law to apportion land, sell, or build on pipeline and flow line right-of-way. Maintain a setback distance of at least 30 meters or about 100 feet from the right-of-way boundaries always. We care for your safety and that of the environment.
This message is brought to you by the Shell Petroleum Development Company of Nigeria Limited, SPDC, operator of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company, NNPC Limited, Total Energies, and Ajib Joint Venture.
Welcome back. It is Canvas, the Niger-Delta Roundtable, brought to you by SPDC. The power of literacy is what we're discussing. I'm Dio. Of course, this conversation as well is in commemoration of World Literacy Day, September 8th annually. My guest is Professor Gloria Amadi. Prof, welcome back.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time once again.
Thank you.
Now, before we went on the break, you made a statement for me. It's very interesting, quite captivating, and I can't help but go back to that. And you said something to the effect that it's simple or easy to make everyone literate.
Yes.
Can you expatiate on that? And if it's so simple or easy, why do we still have high rates of illiteracy?
Yes, it is as easy as I said it. It's just to be intentional. Where at what point do we solve the problem? You know, when you go to solve the problem at the wrong point, it becomes difficult. It is easy when you attend to it. You know, we are exposed to little children at the early childhood education and primary level. We drill them on the alphabet. The next time we put two letters together. The next time we put three letters together. The next time we form a sentence. And it's pleasurable doing this. And the children enjoy it. We count from 1 to 10 today as if we are playing, but we are resolving the problem. Now, if the operators of the school, the stakeholders, will know that it is as simple as that, just placing the child, ensuring that the child goes there. You know, there are regulations, there are laws that say all children must be in school. But during school hours, even policy makers, stakeholders see children out of school and are not disturbed. So if there is a law that education for all children must be in the classroom, why do you see children outside the classroom and you tolerate it? So that tells you there is a problem. Put all of them in the classroom, place teachers before them, let them be drilled in counting. That is where you solve the problem. You solve it with play. It's not a serious problem to solve. But doing it at the right time, be committed to it, I tell you, it is not an issue that we shouldn't have it as one of our problems. But what we should do should be to take these children to somebody. It can be done under a tree. It can be done outside the field. It can be done in the conventional classroom. But let the child identify 1, 2, those signs and symbols. Let the child know the sign of plus, minus, multiplication. Let the child know the shapes. Let the child know the colors. Let the child know the alphabets and how to put them together to make a sentence. Let the child know how to say them. Let the child know how to listen and understand what the next person. These things are resolved seamlessly. All we need to do is to see it as a simple issue and respond to it religiously. Take every child from age 2. Take the child to a place where the child is made to play with other children doing this. It is resolved. So when you meet an adult who cannot read and write and count, it means something very crucial was denied this child. Because at the time the child was most ready for it, attention was not paid to this child. And this person is grown up now. It is difficult now. It is difficult to make an adult to recite A to Z and to do it fluently and to master it. But a child that you sing it, you dance it, masters it freely because he is prepared. He suffers little or no interference in his mind. So it's simple.
You say it can be done anywhere, in a classroom or under a tree somewhere.
Yes.
But it's not better to have this learning experience taking place in a controlled environment like a classroom with modern equipment and whiteboards or even digital boards and modern teaching aids rather than in the open space or under a tree someplace where you're exposed to the harsh elements?
Yeah, that's the thinking of the ordinary person, that to have good learning at that level, that you have to have all those facilities, place the children. No, you rather place them under nature. They learn faster. Now, imagine that on your walkway from your gate, on the floor, you tiled or you have interlock or cemented, and then you decided to write 1, 2, 3, call an artist, and he puts this thing on the floor. So each time the child comes, he jumps on top of the written figure, 1, and he counts. So you have stimulated the environment for learning. Now imagine that you take the children around the garden and they are counting the trees and the flowers. How many flowers are in this compound? So at that level, yes, it is good to take them to school for certain reasons, but learning takes place everywhere. Now, everywhere, they learn color, they learn size, they learn shapes, they learn figures, they learn letters, everywhere. They read the signpost. So you use every opportunity to make them such that even in a classroom, the structure, because the school system is structured, but these other areas will complement what they do. But I tell you, it is easier and faster in those other avenues than even in the classroom.
Globally, resources are scarce, and it gets worse when you come to underdeveloped or developing countries such as ours, and here in the Niger-Delta also. Could that be a challenge, scarce resources? Because whether you have a controlled environment like a classroom and all the modern teaching aids, or you're out using the immediate environment or the open space, you need to make some kind of investment. You need teachers, you need teaching aids, you need lots of things. So is that a challenge? Because you also mentioned earlier that it's actually simple to get people literate.
Yes.
But it also costs money, as simple as it might be. So is that a problem with us?
Yeah, it is a problem, but it is not as problematic as we perceive it to be. You see, it is the willpower to make it happen that is the issue. You may have all the money, but you may not have so much result. what is the problem? You define the problem. Why? The problem is the ability to read, write, count, identify figures, identify shapes, know the signs and symbols. That's literacy. Communicate. He understand what somebody else says. Forge relationship. That's literacy. And the time. So that you have to understand the timing. You have to understand the people involved and the methodology. It doesn't require so much. But now we should have schools. Because the parents who should have done this job are out for their economic life. So they take them to school to do what home would have done. Otherwise, in fact, the child should learn from home before literacy should be resolved at home. I'm not discussing other issues, but just literacy here. So literacy should have been resolved at home because in the home they have started counting, they have started reading. But now there is a school system where trained personnel are kept. Now, they take them to those places. Just give teachers minimal education. Let the teacher have 3-year training and obtain NCE. Let a teacher have that. Then you have solved literacy problem. But when we don't do these basic things, we may spend all the billions pursuing illiteracy problem and we will not have result. Now, I have been emphasizing on doing it early. There are people who were unfortunate that they did not receive that attention. You know, looking at the event today, I think I can say that parents are realizing education at this level. So there are people who are grown up. They know, even as we talk it here, they know that they missed it. It was not by their making. Maybe there was no enough motivation to drive them to school. And then maybe as children, they were taken to school, but no proper attention was paid to them. And they grew up not knowing how to read and write. The question is, are they hopeless? No. They are not hopeless. The only challenge is that what would have been very seamless will now be a little more difficult because they are engaged, they are preoccupied with so many things. But there is hope for them. Some of us have gone beyond just teaching to knowing how to help such people. So they can be trained in a short while. They can, acquire basic literacy that will enable them read, count, and live their lives.
Now, besides the benefits that could accrue to them personally,
yes,
does that in any way improve society or add to the community in any way?
Of course, what makes up the society or the community are the human capital. Now, I told you, if you want to have a rich society, you have high literacy level, because you have highly productive people who can harness their resources. Now, let me tell you, every human being you see, even the stark illiterate, has a lot of potentials, but they cannot unleash them because there is a blockade, there is a limitation. Imagine somebody who has the quality of talking. This person can naturally talk. The potential to talk is inherent in the person. The person would have become a good lawyer. But the person could not learn to read or write. So the potential remains there. And the danger of such situations is that the energy will look for avenue for expression. And that's why you have so many troublesome people. Because they have the energy to talk. They should have been in the law court room talking or teaching in the classroom. The gift, the potential to talk, the energy is sufficient in them, but something is limiting them. So they find that avenue. If anything takes you to such people and they unleash that energy on you, then you will know that everybody you see is carrying potentials.
Technology is extremely advanced in this day and age, and no doubt it will get even more advanced as the days and years go by. What roles do digital tools and online resources play in promoting literacy today?
Yes, digital tools are very essential now. Now, what would have taken somebody to school can be achieved at home now. Now, that adult who may be shy to go to an open space to reveal himself or herself that I cannot read, teach me, can now learn to read and write with computer, because such technology has built such digital classrooms, e-tutors, and things like that. You can learn as you open your computer, your handset. There are platforms, there are applications that will teach you how to read, that will teach you how to count, and all this. So technology has actually come to help. But the next question is, how have we been able to understand what the technology carries, what the tools carry? We've not been able. Otherwise, in today's world, even the literate people who are in school will need little or no need of the teacher to know all they need to know. Because what a lecture that they delivered yesterday in the best university in the world, you can access it. The courses you are offering in the university is there. You have more than enough. But what do we do with it? Nobody goes to such areas because there is no adequate enlightenment and orientation on the use of this to enhance our lives. You don't need to sit under anybody for so long a time to learn whatever you want to learn. Technology has brought knowledge closest to the person. So, but to utilize it, to harness the available resources that technology has offered us is where the problem is. And that's why such discussion as this, I consider to be very vital, even at this time.
And speaking of our discussion thus far, some of the challenges with literacy in our environment has been unearthed. What practical steps then can communities and governments take, especially here in the Niger-Delta, to support and enhance literacy efforts?
Yeah, community. When we mean community, I mean the specific villages and towns that we have in Niger-Delta. The specific villages and towns where you have a chief, you have youth leaders, you have youth group, you have women. Those are the people we are talking to now. One of their fundamental concerns should be to organize educative programs. Gather children. It should be a community project to promote such things. Children gather. Let the community have a program. At the end of the year, let children gather to read, to count, to do this. Let it be a program or a project of the community. Let communities build libraries. Let communities train teachers. Community train teachers. You can have teachers trained by the community to address the problem of that community. Let them have such things. Let them promote reading activities. Let communities think of, at the end of the year, let us gather our children in primary school, in secondary school. Let us initiate spelling bee, writing competition, speaking competition. Let it be community programs. While we dance masquerade and the rest, let us make this part of the community program at the end of the year. Let agents of the community, clubs, associations, come into this. Let it be part of your year program. Let charitable people initiate. I have a foundation that I do some of these things in my village. I gather children, initiate essay writing competition, mathematics competition, poetry, and the children are excited. The 1,000 you give to a winner, he will value it. It doesn't require so much to achieve. With 50,000, you have done a big program in your community. With 50,000, tell them the first, second, third winners go home with 5,000. It's a big motivation. It can be done.
And governments?
Yes, and of course, it begins from the family to the community and to government. Government is there to provide the enablement. But the people who should take up the responsibility should be the community and the family. Commissioner will not come to my village to teach children. Commissioner will not come to my village to initiate essay competition. It should be people in that my village. The rich men, the age grade meetings, the clubs should engage. They are looking for what to do at the ending of the year. Let them call the children together, give them task. Who will best mathematician award, best spoken word poetry award, essay writing award. 5,000 can do so much. Now, if you give 5,000 or thereabout to the winners, the other ones may have consolation prize, even handshake. And then you would have succeeded in not making only these 3, or if the resources, you expand it. You are addressing it. If it is happening in my village, it's happening in Dio's village, it's happening in the other person's village, it's happening everywhere. We have solved the problem of illiteracy. Like I told you, it looks like a big problem, but it's a minor problem that can be easily resolved if we know the timing and address it at that time. The children can read.
Policymakers. Policy is very crucial. Educators, experts, professionals like yourself. How can policymakers and educators collaborate to improve literacy rates?
Yeah, you see, policymakers, when we say policymakers, we are just looking at people serving us in the government. They are making laws, making policies, but those policies made, they need collaboration. So the community should know what government is doing. Government should know what community should do to drive the policies they have made. Now, curriculum or curricula should, be fine-tuned and prepared in such a way that it will address community needs. They should be intentional. What kind of system are we running as school makes policy? Policymakers make decisions, make this. The community agents come and they achieve the objective. They build schools. They make policy. Okay, I understand those in the legislative chamber of government, they give them constituency projects at state, national level. Now, if you prioritize education and say, what I am going to address is literacy, I tell you, you have done the best. The best is what you have done. If you construct road for people who cannot read and write, if you construct physical project for people who cannot, they will destroy it. They will vandalize it. But if you train people and make them literate, whatever you place will be secured. So you do the first. Make the people to be literate. Train teachers, provide infrastructure, make enlightenment programs, motivate children, and be sincere, spend judiciously, provide funds, and you have the people. Majority of the people, in fact, we have an agency of government. We have a department in the university that a unit, the Nomadic Education Center. That center is supposed to be sponsored by government to go out to remote areas, fish ports, and places like that to make sure that every child is captured and given education. Just give it to a child, he grows with it.
Maybe, I think this might be my final question. What are the long-term benefits of literacy for individuals and societies?
Yeah, we will have improved economic prospects. This is Niger-Delta. We are addressing the problems today. We should also look at the future. If we don't address the problem looking at the future, we will continue to have problems in the future. So if we address this, it's fundamental. We'll have improved economic prospect. We'll have better health status. Because educated person will not abuse drug. someone who can read will understand what the drug person has inscribed. He will not take the wrong one because he can read. So we'll have better health care. We'll have enhanced civic engagement. You have young people who will come out and interact reasonably and productively if you have a high literacy level. And then you have stronger social cohesion among the communities. You know, people are fighting here and there. The simple fact is that these people are not well enlightened. You may dispute it, you may argue it, you may tell me that this other person, but go closer to people. Do you know we carry Bible, we carry Quran? It is not everybody carrying those good books that can read them. So if you are not able to read them, you only depend on what you hear. And then even what you hear, if you are not literate enough, you cannot make meaning. Because there will be words that you don't know, so it will be disjointed. So we need people who can read and write. So that if you give them a written material, they'll be able to read. You tell them, go write to me, they'll be able to write. You tell them, interpret, they'll be able to interpret. So the long-term impact of literacy are these. And then there will be rapid development. You know, where you have people who are not so well read, people who cannot read and write, you have so much problems. You come do programs, it cannot be interpreted, it can't be understood. So understanding is a factor here.
And that's it. On this edition of Canvas in Niger-Delta Roundtable, we have discussed the power of literacy in commemoration of World Literacy Day, which comes up September 8th annually. Thanks for joining us. My guest has been Professor Gloria Amadi. Prof, many thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Daniel. I appreciate, and I will always avail myself to make my contributions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Literacy is everything. Literacy is life. And the program is brought to you by SPDC. I'm Adid Daye Lushakin. Join us next week for another edition. Good day.